After a long wait, the great emperor finally arrived. Narrowing his eyes, his entire body exuded killing intent as he gazed at the scene before him. The horde of exotic beasts that had been waiting for the great emperor became restless the moment they saw him, shouting excitedly, "He's here!" The great emperor stood motionless in the starry void, facing the army of thousands of exotic beasts. One beast at the forefront of the army roared, "Charge! We must protect this star domain." At that command, the rest of the beasts immediately sprang into action, quickly scattering around to encircle the great emperor. Among them, a beast with countless blazing red eyes surveyed the battlefield and thought to itself, "We've gathered a total of 50,000 troops here. Just at Transcendent Rank 5, we have over 100 cultivators. Not to mention, there are 3 Rank 6 powerhouses joining this battle. Even if we cannot win, we must at least heavily wound him." Before it could think further, the great emperor, who had stood without moving, suddenly stomped his foot, the thunderous impact echoing across the battlefield. He abruptly opened his massive mouth and let out a ferocious roar. The many-eyed beast was startled by the abnormality, instinctively becoming vigilant. At the same time, the great emperor released a terrifying torrent of crimson spiritual power straight toward the charging beast army. The exotic beasts rushing forward had no time to react and were swept aside by the great emperor's power. As the crimson force collided with them, dazzling explosions of varying sizes lit up the void. The weaker beasts barely had time to scream before they were obliterated by a single sweep of the great emperor's spiritual might. The many-eyed beast quickly retaliated, unleashing a tentacle shockwave. Countless long tendrils shot outward under its control. Another leading beast activated its black hole burst, gathering spiritual energy in its maw to form a massive black orb. The last of the 3 leaders raised its hand, condensing spiritual fire behind it into a blazing fireball projectile. The many-eyed beast, brimming with killing intent, bellowed at the great emperor, "Get back to your own territory." The 3 leading beasts combined their techniques, their terrifying energies intertwining into one unified strike that hurtled toward the great emperor. The beasts watching from behind held their breath. This was the joint technique of 3 Rank 6 elites. As the fusion skill reached the great emperor, he suddenly extended a long, blood-red tentacle. With a whip-like strike, the tentacle slashed directly through the oncoming attack, tearing it apart. The fuse technique of the 3 leaders exploded in an instant, scattering countless blinding lights. The shockwave from the great emperor's counterattack slammed against the cosmic barrier with a deafening roar. In the next moment, thick clouds of white smoke filled the void. The beasts, sensing the terrifying force of that blow, could not help but cry out in fear. They were shaken, unable to believe their eyes. The cosmic barrier itself had been fractured by a single strike from the great emperor. One beast stammered in horror, "The cosmic wall. It's cracking!" And yet, the great emperor remained unscathed, standing firmly in place. The beast trembled in dread. He was unharmed. At that moment, the many-eyed beast suddenly roared, "Hold him off for me." The other 2 leaders turned their heads toward it in surprise. Determined, the many-eyed beast declared, "I must sacrifice my eyes and unleash that technique. Only then is there hope of touching the great emperor." One of the leaders widened its eyes in shock, but quickly responded with a loud roar, "Leave it to me." Without another word, that beast abruptly activated gigantification. In an instant, its body swelled, growing hundreds of times larger. It opened its enormous maw and let out a thunderous roar. The surrounding beasts now appeared tiny, like mere insects in its gaze. The gigantic beast stood firm, facing the great emperor. Another leading beast raised its head, stunned. It hadn't expected such an immense transformation. But the colossal beast said nothing. It stomped its foot heavily, gathering momentum. In the next instant, it lunged forward, wrapping its massive arms around the great emperor's enormous head. Yet no matter how much strength it exerted, the great emperor did not budge an inch. Soon, the beast's body began to tremble violently, unable to withstand the pressure. Suddenly, a surge of flame-like spiritual power erupted from its hands. It roared with all its might, straining against the great emperor. Aya! The great emperor abruptly widened his eyes and looked straight at it. He exhaled a single breath. The beast was instantly forced back, suppressed by nothing more than his breath. Gritting its teeth, it roared in defiance. "Ah, my flames! Ugh!" Before it could finish speaking, the great emperor unleashed a terrifying surge of spiritual power that instantly reduced it to fine dust. That beast was effortlessly destroyed by a single casual strike. The overwhelming spiritual force tore across the starry void, leaving behind a blazing crimson trail of light. Seeing the situation turn dire, the remaining leading beast immediately shouted, "Flame Giant!" But before it could act, the great emperor had already launched a tentacle that pierced straight through its head. Countless tentacles extended from the great emperor, swarming toward it. The beast's eyes widened as the crimson tendrils closed in, stopping mere centimeters from its body. Terror gripped it, cold sweat pouring down its face. A moment later, a blood-curdling scream echoed across the vast cosmos. Aha! Its body was run through by the great emperor's writhing tentacles. Its innards were quickly ripped out and scattered into the void. Within the barrier, the many-eyed beast with blazing crimson eyes could only stare in horror at the blood splattering before it. Its spirit trembled violently, cold sweat drenching its body as its eyes bulged in fear. Before its gaze, the other beast's body was torn apart, ripped into pieces by the great emperor's tentacles. Before such terrifying might, it had no power to resist. Suddenly, the great emperor threw his head back and let out an earth-shaking roar. The many-eyed beast's expression twisted in panic. It shrieked, "What are you standing there for? Stop him! If you don't want your planet destroyed, then fight!" Only then did the remaining beasts snap out of their stupor, hastily unleashing every kind of spiritual power they could muster toward the great emperor. At that moment, a fissure of light split open along the great emperor's trunk. From within, a single blood-red eye slowly emerged and snapped open, glaring wide and radiating a crushing, suffocating pressure.